I work reception at a boutique hotel in Prague. An American couple checked in and asked what time zone we used. I said Central European time. The husband nodded slowly, then asked, "So like Eastern Standard, but European?" I explained it was completely different. He pulled out his phone, confident. "No, I'm pretty sure Prague is basically the same longitude as New York. We learned that in school." I pulled up a map. He stared at it for a full minute. Then he said, "Well, Google Maps has a liberal bias." His wife elbowed him. He spent the rest of check-in muttering about education systems. A guest at our Copenhagen Airbnb asked if we accepted pounds. I said Denmark uses kroner. She looked confused. "But you're in the UK, right?" "I thought Scandinavia was part of England." I told her Denmark was a separate country. She laughed. "Okay, but like, technically British, though." I showed her a map of Europe. She studied it carefully, then pointed at Sweden and said, "So this is Scotland." I gave up. She left a review complaining that Danish people were weirdly defensive about being English. These moments made me realize something. Geography isn't just facts on a map. It's the gap between confidence and knowledge. And that gap can be absolutely enormous. If you're the kind of person who values knowing the world as it is, not as someone misremembered in 10th grade, this is where you belong. I decode these blind spots every week. Subscribe so you don't lose your edge. I manage a car rental office in Barcelona. An American walked in and asked for a vehicle to drive to Paris for lunch. I said that was about 650 miles and would take 10 hours. He laughed. "Everything's close in Europe." I saw it on a map. I pulled up the actual route. He stared at the screen. "That can't be right." "My teacher said you could drive across Europe in a day." Explained Europe was about the same size as the US. He shook his head. "Nah, I've seen the globe. Europe's tiny." I showed him overlays comparing land masses. He squinted at them. "These are drawn wrong. America's bigger than all of Europe combined." I pointed out Russia was in Europe. He said, "Russia's in Asia." I said it was in both. He said that was impossible. A country can't be in two continents. That's not how geography works. He rented the car anyway. He called from the highway 3 hours later, furious that Paris wasn't appearing on the horizon. He'd driven 90 miles and expected to see the Eiffel Tower. He accused me of giving him a broken GPS. When I reminded him about the 10-hour drive, he said, "Well, you should have been clearer." He returned the car half empty and complained that European roads were intentionally confusing. See the pattern? Most people travel the world with the wrong map. Literally. If you like getting the real one, the one locals trust, tap subscribe and stay ahead of the confusion. I run a tour company in Amsterdam. An American family booked our Netherlands highlights day trip. The father asked if we'd stop in Belgium. I said that was a different country. He frowned. "But it's right there, right? Like how you can drive from Ohio to Michigan." I explained we'd need to cross an international border. He waved his hand. "Same thing. They all speak Dutch anyway." I told him Belgians spoke Dutch and French. He said French is basically Dutch. I gave up and said Belgium wasn't on the tour. He asked if we could just pop over during lunch. I said no. He spent the entire tour asking if various Dutch cities were secretly in Belgium. When we passed a French restaurant in Amsterdam, he turned to his family and announced, "See, we made it to Belgium," his teenage daughter said. "Dad, we're still in Amsterdam," he said. "Amsterdam's in Belgium, sweetie." She pulled up Google Maps. He glanced at it and said, "Well, the border moved." At the end of the tour, he asked why we hadn't seen any Belgian waffles. I told him he could find them in Amsterdam too. He looked betrayed. "So Belgium stole them from the Netherlands?" I said Belgium invented them. He wrote a review saying, "Our tour skipped advertised countries. Advertised country was the Netherlands. Just the Netherlands." I work at a train station in Vienna. An American asked for a ticket to Australia. I assumed he meant Austria and said, "You're already here." He said, "No, I want to go to Australia. The one with kangaroos." I explained that Australia was a continent across the world. He insisted Europe had trains everywhere. I told him Australia was 16 hours by plane. He didn't believe me. I saw a map. It's near Germany. I asked if he meant Austria. He said no, definitely Australia. Kangaroos, outback, all that. I pulled up a world map. He studied it and pointed at Austria. There, Australia. I spelled out both names. He looked at them for a long moment, then said, "That's a typo. They're the same place." I explained the two countries were on opposite sides of the planet. He said his travel agent told him he could train there. I asked who his travel agent was. He said, "I don't remember, but she seemed legit." I suggested flying to Sydney. He asked how much the train to the airport cost. I told him the airport was here in Vienna. He said, "Perfect. So I'll train to Australia from Vienna airport?" I gave up. He bought a ticket to Salzburg instead, apparently thinking that was close enough. He left saying, "I'll just Google map it from there." I work at a travel agency in Athens. An American woman asked about ferry times to Turkey. I gave her the schedule. She asked how long the flight was. I said, "Ferries don't fly." She clarified, "No, I mean the flight to the ferry." I explained the ferry left from Athens. She looked stunned. "Wait, Greece touches Turkey?" I said they shared a maritime border. She shook her head firmly. "Greece is an island. It doesn't touch anything." I told her Greece was a peninsula with land borders. She pulled up her phone and showed me a picture of Santorini. "This is Greece. It's an island." Explained Greece had a mainland and thousands of islands. She said that didn't make sense. "So is it an island or not?" I said both. She said I was contradicting myself. "It can't be both. That's basic geography." I showed her a map of Greece. She stared at it. "Where's the water between Greece and Turkey?" I pointed to the Aegean Sea. She zoomed in on her phone. "That's not an ocean. That doesn't count." I told her seas were still water borders. She said, "In America, borders are clear." This is confusing on purpose. She ended up booking a flight to Istanbul instead, convinced the ferry was a scam. She later emailed asking why her flight didn't go over an ocean. I didn't respond. I manage a hotel in Oslo. An American asked if we had whale-watching tours. I said we could arrange that. He asked if the whales swam up from Mexico. I said these were Atlantic whales. He insisted all whales migrated from warm water. I explained Norway had native whale populations. He said that was impossible. Whales don't live in cold water. They're tropical. I told him whales were found in Arctic waters. He said I was thinking of seals. I showed him information about Norwegian whales. He read it and said, "This says Arctic. That's near Alaska, not Norway." I explained the Arctic Circle went through Norway. He laughed. "The Arctic is the North Pole. Norway's in Europe." I pulled up a map showing the Arctic Circle. He examined it suspiciously. "This map's in kilometers. That's not accurate." I converted it to miles. He studied the new map and said, "Okay, but Europe can't be in the Arctic." "That's not a thing," I told him. "Scandinavia extended into Arctic regions." He said Scandinavia is that group of islands near England, right? I corrected him. He said his geography teacher showed him a map where Scandinavia was islands. I asked when he took geography. He said, 10th grade. I asked what year. He said 1987. I told him maps had improved. He said maps didn't change. Geography's permanent. We went on the whale tour. Afterward, he said the whales were clearly lost and should be reported to authorities so they could be returned to warm water. I work at the information desk in the Dubai Mall. An American family approached and asked what state Dubai was in. I said Dubai was a city in the United Arab Emirates. The father looked skeptical. "We flew here from Texas. That's only like 6 hours. We're definitely still in America." I explained they'd flown internationally. He said, "Nah, the pilot said something about time zones, but we didn't cross an ocean." I told him they'd crossed the Atlantic. He shook his head. "We would have noticed an ocean." We were awake most of the flight. His wife checked her phone and showed him the map. He zoomed in and out several times. "Okay, so where's the ocean?" She showed him the Atlantic. He said that's between Europe and America. We didn't go to Europe. I explained flight paths aren't straight lines on flat maps. He said, "So you're saying we flew over Europe to get to America?" I said Dubai wasn't in America. He pulled up the UAE flag on his phone. This looks American. Red, white, stars. I pointed out the UAE flag had no stars. He squinted at it. "Well, it's close enough." "We basically never left," his teenage son said. "Dad, we're in the Middle East." The father said, "The Middle East of what?" The son just walked away. The father turned back to me and asked where the nearest Walmart was. I said Dubai didn't have Walmart. He said, "Every American city has Walmart." I said, "Dubai wasn't American." He said we'd already established it was. I suggested he check his passport stamps. He said he didn't get his passport stamped. We're domestic. I gave up and directed him to a large supermarket. He asked if they accepted dollars. I said yes, but the exchange rate wouldn't be great. He said, "Exchange rate? We're in America?" He walked away, muttering about the education system, failing everyone but him. Geography isn't about memorizing capitals. It's about understanding the world's vastness, complexity, and the humility to realize you might not know everything. But the most entertaining moments come from people who believe their confidence is equivalent to a cartographer's entire career. These stories remind me that the world is much larger than any single perspective. And sometimes the best education happens when you accidentally book a ferry to a country you thought was fictional. If this story shifted even one assumption for you, imagine having that clarity on tap every week. Subscribing isn't for me. It's so you never miss the next revelation. Got your own geography disaster story? Drop it below. And if you've ever confidently corrected a local about their own country's location, this video was for you.